I was 21 years old when I saw my father's soul for the first time, and it was also the last time. Now, they say that the eyes are the windows of the soul, and I didn't really understand what that meant till later in life, but I have a story I want to share with you that's going to help you understand how our soul is present at our worst times and our best times, but especially when we are in this place of just we let the human condition fall away because there is nothing other than the soul that is present at that moment. So I had just turned 21 years old, and 2 days after my birthday, my father was put in the hospital, and he was put in the hospital for heart failure, lung failure, and kidney failure. So it was not a good scene. It was not looking good. And he was in ICU. They put him on a ventilator right away, and he was in ICU for 17 days. And it was Christmas Day of that year, 1990, that the doctor came in and he said, this is not going to happen. This is not working. He's going to die. So it was Christmas Day of that year. And being Catholic, we grew up Catholic, and basically what had transpired from there is my mom called the priest to come do the last rites. I was standing by my father's bedside, holding his hand. My mother was on the other side. My siblings were in the waiting room, and it was interesting because when the priest came in, my father looked at the door, saw the priest, his hand tightened on my hand, and he looked straight at me. Now, he was on a ventilator, so he could not speak at that point. But he looked straight at me, and our eyes met, and I will never forget that moment. And I get emotional every time I think about that moment because it was imprinted on my own soul at that moment that his soul recognized what was happening in that moment. And the sheer terror in that moment and watching his eyes just change and literally, I did not understand what I was seeing at the time. It was much later that I understood it. That it was one of those things where his soul met mine, my soul met his. We were locked into that moment. And for whatever reason, he looked at me and not my mom. I'll never know, except for the fact that I do know that my soul health model, my understanding of soul health, my understanding of reincarnation, my understanding of anything to do with the human condition that is related to the soul, all started in that moment. Now, I had had many spiritual experiences prior to that, but I didn't see them as spiritual experiences. When you are a young person, you have these experiences, you think everybody's having these experiences. I never talked about them, I never thought to, but it was one of those things where in that moment, something opened up within me. So as his door was closing, it really helped my door open. And fast forward, and he actually, by the way, he did die at 1:15 a.m. the next morning. And there's a story behind that. I'll go ahead and tell that now because that'll help you understand some of this too. That night, we went home. He was on a ventilator. He had already slipped into a coma. The nurses said, this could take days. Why don't you go home and get some rest? I think it was probably 11 o'clock. I did try to go to sleep. I woke up sitting in my bedroom. I had this dream that basically my father and I were in a conference room, and I was on the end of the table, kind of my feet up, kicking back. He was on the side chair right there. We're just kind of chatting, and then all of the lights went out, pure darkness. And I started calling to him, and I said, "Dad, Dad, Dad," and nothing happened. And I woke up sitting on the side of my bed in my mom's house, and it was pure dark. And I'm sitting there thinking, gosh, what the heck was that? And then the phone rings. And I reached over, picked up the phone. It was the nurse said, you need to get back down here. He's going. And it was one of those things where that was the second stage in me knowing that something had opened up within me. My intuition, my knowingness, everything was starting to open up at the same time that his life was closing down. So fast forward many, many years later. I was basically about 8 years later, I was in therapy. I was going through a divorce. I was talking through everything in my life that I needed to talk through. It was the very end of my doctoral program. And I remember telling the therapist that it felt very strange to be graduating and not have him there, because he was the only person who really supported any, and I say any of my crazy career ideas, all the way from like age 5 all the way up. Kids fantasize about what they're going to do, but my dad would support every one of them. And it was just a beautiful kind of thing. So I told her that. Then later, as I went through my psychological training, and I thought, wow, I want to be a medical psychologist, a holistic psychologist. I'm working through that process. And again, I started to understand the different aspects of wellness that go into a person's well-being. And that's where I eventually created my soul health model. I expanded what I knew of wellness models that were out there to make it much more complete. That's why I do this, because of my tree. It's an image of a tree that has 10 branches, the human condition, that to me, every single person on this planet at some point in their life tries to figure out, tries to balance. Created that model, eventually wrote a book about it. It wasn't until the second release of the book, the revised version of it, came out, and I was on a podcast or a radio interview, I'm not sure which it was, and one of the hosts asked me, where was it that you started to learn about soul health? And I flashed back to that moment where I had that experience with my father. And without even thinking, I told the story. I told the story of what had happened. And I realized that there was something going on beneath the surface for my father that was much bigger than what was happening in that moment for the human condition. And that is how I started to realize the above and the below, meaning the above, the human condition that we see, face value, everything that we see going on in a person's life. But then we have to go beneath that surface to help a person understand and help yourself understand, what is the soul aspect of this? What is the part of this that is affecting me, influencing me, changing me at the soul level that is going to affect how I am on the human condition? So we have the above, we have the below. We all function from both aspects, whether we know it or not. And so it's super, super important for us to start to realize the soul is present in every moment and in every action, every thought, every behavior, every emotion. Everything that we do, it's present, even though we may not know it. And so when you think about the above and the below, I look back to that time with my father, and I did not realize it at the time, but those eyes being the window to the soul, his eyes met mine, my eyes met his, and there was some sort of an exchange that happened just in that moment. He was on a ventilator, he could not talk, but there was an exchange that happened that provided me really with the knowing. Somehow it clicked some sort of button in me to open everything up to understand the soul. And so when I talk about this story, I have to hold back tears a lot of times, because not only because it was a very poignant moment in losing a father from the human condition, but it was such a poignant moment for me opening up to my own evolution as a soul. Because I will tell you, everything from that point forward just expanded layer after layer after layer. Now, I will say, age 9, when he had his accident, he had an accident when I was 9, basically medically disabled him. But really, the thing is, there's no reason he could not have come back to full function. Physically speaking, yes, he had a broken hip, he broke his leg, he broke his arm in this accident. He had a slight brain injury. It wasn't something like a major, major brain injury that made him, I don't know, made him change personality and all of that, but it did shut him down. And so that in itself helped me realize that life changes for someone else. When there's a tragedy happen, it changes for them, but everybody around them, it changes their life course as well. And so when I talk about trauma, when I talk about soul development, when I talk about soul wounds, it's all about looking back to see what are the junctures in your life that have happened in poignant ways that were really there to open something up for you, for something to, it's an opportunity for us to evolve, even though in this whole experience of tragedy, how is it that we make something good out of it? And that is the whole point, is that a lot of times there is so much good and so much opportunity that comes from our discomfort, comes from our pain. And that's where that whole phrase, bringing purpose to pain. In other words, how do you use the pain that you've experienced and put some sort of purpose to it so you can evolve beyond it? So this story, I'm hoping, helps you understand. Again, we do live the above and below. We do live the human condition and the soul condition at all times. I also hope that it helps you look back and look at these poignant periods in your life. And instead of getting mired in the pain, step back and look at it from that evolutionary perspective to ask yourself, what was supposed to happen there? What did happen there? How did that change me? How did that season who I am? How did that reprogram me? How did that reweave the fabric of my soul in a way that basically changed my life forever? Because that is really what this is about, is starting to understand what it is that our soul path is and what it is that we're supposed to do with it. So, this message may be brief, but I hope you listen to it a few times to help you kind of tune into those experiences of your own, because that one moment in time of going soul to soul with my father when he was about to pass made all of the difference in my world, all of the difference in my life, which gives me the opportunity to make a difference in yours. And so for me, this is what this has been all about. My own soul health journey has not been easy. Many things sprinkled along the way that I had to deal with. But in knowing and understanding the soul, it was one of those things where it helped me put everything in perspective for myself to understand how this thing works, the soul works, and how to understand the human condition and how to understand that very dynamic interplay that happens between them so that I can help you. And that is really what my mission is to help you understand your soul so that it can take you to higher levels, to you, for you to understand things, for you to weave things together differently, and also for you to heal, because we have to clean out those wounds. We have to understand those wounds. We have to put it all together, heal it, move beyond it, and then get to that next level. And that is what soul consciousness and soul evolution is all about. So, yes, I hope you listen to this a few times just to kind of process where your key changes in your life are. Also, understanding the above and below, help you understand also where to take yourself. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Dr. Katherine Kelly. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll be back more with more what I call ancient wisdom for the modern soul. Take care. Bye-bye.